We have come on an excursion. We have come to a recycling centre. And there's Betty. We've come on our excursion to a recycling yard that gets a lot of plywood, windows, doors. Anyways, Jerry spotted this. These are 18mm plywood boards and they were £20 a piece. So we've got 4 of them and this is what we're going to use as part of the flooring. So we didn't want to take up the old floor until we had stuff to lay down, so that we could still, so I could still drive the bus, because obviously at the moment it's an incredibly great vehicle for going to buy materials, but not if you can't drive it because you don't have a floor. So now that we've got the boards, I guess tomorrow or the next day or whatever, we're going to start taking up the floor. Today is a very exciting day because it is day 1 of taking up the floor. So as I'll show you in a minute, we did a small test area and we've gone away and watched lots of videos, got all our tools together. Jerry says he's come up with a plan, so I believe him. And let's see how far we get. We definitely don't think we're going to do it all in one day, but I think we're going to make some good headway today. But we know it's going to be an absolute pain in the backside. And I'll explain to you all in a minute why I'm putting myself through this. We are doing a bit of a recce at the moment. This is the first time we've pulled out the wheelchair lift. So that's what it looks like. It sits in a sort of box underneath. And from our little experiments of taking up some of the floor, we can see it's a hell of a lot lower than the actual floor height. Good old Jerry taking a good look at everything, trying to come up with a good plan. Here is the test piece that we took out the other day. It's not, you can't really see much underneath because it's the wheelchair lift, but we're going to attempt to take out this whole sort of centre panel today and try and get these unwin rails up. In our bid to understand how the unwin rails are fixed to the chassis, Jerry spends a bit of time with his arm in the hole, feeling for the bolts and attempting to undo the nuts. So annoyingly, this is how you have to take the floor out. You have to cut small holes in the plywood to get access to the beams underneath, where there are bolts that hold in these unwin rails. And obviously there's cross members every, I don't even know how big that is, but not very big. And there's 2 bolts to each sort of cross member. So it's a very tricky process of cut a small hole and then, as Jerry is heroically doing at the moment, get your hand under there with a wrench and undo some bolts. You are probably asking yourself a very big question, which is, why is she bothering to take up the floor? There was a perfectly good floor there. She could have just battened over and insulated over what was there. And just left it intact. And you are very right, I could have done that. But And I did really consider doing that because that would have made our lives a lot easier and would have made this go a lot quicker. But there are several really good reasons why I haven't done that and why I'm putting Jerry and I through this torture. Those reasons are that if I was to do that, then I increase the height of the current floor, which means I lose head height, which I'm quite short, I'm 5'2", so although it potentially wouldn't have been a huge issue for me, I probably still would have had a little bit of clearance. Anybody bigger than me coming in, you know, it's not going to be very comfortable. So that's not great for, you know, future proofing. The other thing is that we couldn't leave the floor sort of as it was because the original floor has no insulation whatsoever. So whatever we did was going to need to be insulated. The final thing also is that you cannot remove the wheelchair lift easily. I'm sure you probably could, but in theory you can't really remove the wheelchair lift without removing the floor to actually access it all, and that needs to come up because it weighs somewhere around 200 kilos, and I need to get rid of that because one, obviously I'm not going to use it, but two, it's going to free up a lot of weight for my payload, and obviously I'm going to be putting a lot of things back in the bus, so I really want that weight allowance. So another reason to get that up. The final reason to get the floor up and get the wheelchair lift out is because once the wheelchair lift is out, that whole space where the wheelchair lift is, once that is emptied up, that is prime real estate space for mounting undermounted freshwater, grey water, and a refillable gas can, or not can, but you know, gas system, bottle, container. I'm not sure what the right word is. Tank is probably the right word. So by undermounting all of those to the chassis, that frees up so much space in the van for storage, for garage space, and I can have quite large tanks under there. So in my personal case, those advantages outweighed the ease and the time efficiency of just using the existing floor and building it up. So I'm sorry if you're yelling at your television saying, why is she putting herself through all this extra work? Because I want to do a proper job and I want to do the best job I can do, and I'm not afraid of some harder work, although let's also be honest, poor Jerry's been putting in probably the brunt of the work. So and he also asked me a few times, are you really sure you want to take the floor up? But luckily he's been really supportive and like I said, been really attacking this floor. There's no way I'd be this far ahead if he hadn't done the lion's share of the I'm going to call it engineering. Is it engineering for if you're trying to deconstruct something? Because it feels like it has taken a lot of thought and trial and error and practice to find the right tools, the right way to do stuff. Yes. So hopefully someone learns from our video, because I couldn't find any clearer videos online about how to take this floor up. So yeah, hopefully this helps people. But anyways, that's my long-winded explanation of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm sorry if you think I'm crazy.
I have a plan, and I'm quite excited about it.
Jerry has a plan, and I'm very excited about it. I like a man with a plan.
Oh, that is the one that's turning.
Welcome to another day back in the bus. I am solo today. Well, I've got Lemon with me. As you can see, it is a beautiful day, and actually the weather is decent. It's like 9 degrees, so not actually freezing my tushy off. So as you've probably seen in some of the last videos, Jerry and I have made a pretty good start on the floor. And really it's been kind of slow and tentative because we've been trying to figure out how it's actually made to understand the best way to take it apart. And we have come across we've learned a few things. So at the moment, I'll show you in a minute, but you'll probably see we've got just lots of holes in the plywood floor because the unwin rails that are in the floor are actually bolted to the chassis of the bus, and then the plywood fixed over those rails, kind of sandwiching them. And you get sort of the rail, the unwin rail, and then it's got sort of flares, metal bits that protrude out the side of it. So all that to say, it's not very easy to figure out where you can cut through the plywood to make any kind of access to even see the bolts where they are, which is why we've had to make lots of awkward little holes. We then have the issue of some of the bolts came out fairly easily with just a ratchet, but a few of them didn't. The bolts spin, you can't access them, you can't hold them to undo them. So the other day, as you probably saw, we've had to go with the angle grinder and grind them off. Now this has presented a few problems. The main one being that we need a sort of powered angle grinder to be able to get on and do all this stuff, and unfortunately the battery that I have, or the batteries that I have for my cordless angle grinder, they just don't last very long, which is just the nature of the size of batteries that I have. Really, we need a corded angle grinder. We need to plug it in, and we need to be able to just go at this, you know, full power for a couple of hours to just get it all done. I think Jerry was estimating, he thinks there's something like 180 bolts holding this floor to the chassis, and I think in the 5 hours that we've worked so far on this floor, we've maybe taken out like 8 or 9. So we need a better way of going at this. We did figure out, or Jerry figured out, that you can access quite a few of them from under the bus a bit more easily, but that does still involve getting under the bus, and that doesn't help if some of them don't undo properly. You still need the angle grinder. So I am here today by myself to finish off the last little bits of ceiling insulation so that job is completely finished. And I'm going to try my best with the power that I have to make more holes, all the holes that we need in the floor, try and get as much plywood up as possible, so that when Jerry comes next time and when I figure out where we're going to go to be able to plug in and get power, we can really just go at it and just try and get all these bolts gone. I always knew that the floor was going to be the hardest and the longest job to do, and well, it's living up to that expectation. But if we keep getting nice days like this, then it's not too bad. So I will see what I can do today, and we soldier on. going to leave you there for this week. As you can see, it's been a bit of a week of exploring, trying to figure out how to do things. I would definitely say that the floor project is not one of those projects where you kind of get immediate gratification, because although what it probably looks like to you guys is that we haven't really done anything, we've just made a whole bunch of holes in the floor, actually we've ended up being able to remove quite a lot of the bolts on those rails. So once we figure out how to get the last few bolts out, actually all 3 of those rails on that side should come off fairly straightforwardly, if that's a word. So yes, so stick with it, stick with us, that's what we're sticking with it, and come back next week to see what else we've been doing, how we've managed to get power, and what progress we've made, because we are making progress. Thank you so much for watching, for liking, for subscribing, share the videos, and catch you next week.